excuse me, I thought we could break this up somehow, but I don't think that's possible in my mind. It's just
No, good luck.
three episodes, 6, 7, and 8 that just kind of all, I watched them all together, so they all kind of ran together. Um, and I really have no idea what to talk about first or ask first. But I think the thing that the thing that struck me as we were kind of running through the rest of it was I wasn't expecting to see the Turners again, and it was nice how they kind of wove their way back into the story.
Hmm. Well, that was the plan was to give the Turner storyline a really satisfying ending, and really so much of episode 8 is resolving that Turner mystery. You know, why Jack wants the dam in Pakistan, what his connection is to Polyhedris, how Stephen's wife really died, who Tyrone is, and how he connects to Stephen and Jack Turner. So that was a big part of episode 8. And then what I wanted to do was give you the emotional satisfaction of seeing Sam look back at her childhood and those terrible things that happened to her and remember something that is a path forward for her. It's certainly not an answer. It's like a clue, this fingerless man that she sees, when she tries to escape the Oast House. And then she sees his image, his hand at least, in the newspaper. So it promises that, when Sam returns, she'll have a place to start looking to find this man, to get answers about who wants to kill her and why.
Was it difficult to keep all of these threads together all the way through? Or did you find it, since you wrote it all in one chunk, did you find it a little easier?
No, it was really challenging. It was really hard. I mean, and this is one of the things we've been talking about with the spinoff, having the BBC on board and HBO, this serialized story was sort of part of the deal, that we had this relationship with this family and this little boy. And that's not something I think we do in the spinoff, is have that one serialized story. But it was very tricky because really you were dealing with two different narratives every week. There was the narrative of Sam being undercover in that house as Alex Kent, and then there was the narrative of Sam trying to figure out who wants to kill her and why. Plus, you had every other member of Byzantium having their own little stories over the course of those 8 episodes. So it was quite a jigsaw puzzle.
Was the apparent emotionalism of some of these characters, the boss that gets the call girl every week, the Sam, quote unquote, falling for the client, was that not overt's not the word I'm looking for. It's a little early for me to find the word I'm looking for, but was there a conscious choice to make these people flawed in a sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's not a friendly world, and it was interesting because the Keel character who sees that call girl, you see the bruises on her body in the beginning, and you go, "What's that about? Is he beating her?" Or what? And then you find out that she's ill, and he's kind to her, and you think, "Oh, that's nice. He's kind to her." And then he says he doesn't want to see her anymore, and you go, "Oh no, well that's not very nice at all." And then you realize the reason he doesn't want to see her is because he's dying himself. He's very ill. But to me, that illness that he's facing created the opportunity for him to perhaps do something selfless and good at the end of these 8 episodes, which would be out of character otherwise. Because Keel is such a cold and self-interested character. And in episode 6, when you find out he's got this brain tumor, the doctor says to him, when you're facing your own mortality, it's an opportunity to find meaning in life. And Keel kind of looks at him like he's an idiot. But in the next episode, Keel confronts Sam, and he's found out everything, right? He says to her, I know, Sam, you should have come to me instead of having Aiden cover for you. I got your hospital records in Istanbul. And, you don't know it at that point, but what he's saying is, I know you had a baby. He says, I know, and she freezes when he says that. But she says to him, I didn't trust you because you follow orders, Mr. Keel. you know, and you may not like it, but you would do what your employers tell you to do. And so to me, in episode 8, when Sam's death is staged on that bridge, it's Keel doing something good. And I think you have to really earn that in this world. You have to really look for those moments of kindness and human decency, because it's such a cold, hard world otherwise.
It's interesting that you bring those few points up, because I think unless you were really, really paying attention, the last segment may seem like a dream, and her
Yes.
death may seem real, and I assume that is what you were actually going for.
Yeah, it's funny because internally, while we were writing that episode, everybody thought it's going to be so obvious she's not dead. It's going to be so obvious. It's like episode 1 where, you know, the show begins literally with the same character, Crane, with a sniper rifle on the roof in Tangier, shooting her, and she's not dead. And we're quoting that situation in the final episode. And everybody was convinced the audience was going to be so far ahead and just know for a second, you know, not for a second is she possibly dead. And I think we were all surprised at how many people were convinced that she had, in fact, been killed on the bridge. So, yeah, it would have been a lot of people debating online, you know, is she dead? Is that a dream at the end? Whose baby is that? But I think if you, like you said, if you paid really close attention, you'd realize, well, you know, it is quoting what happened in the beginning. And Keel does say to Crane, I want to end this once and for all, but I need your help. And Crane at that point, remember, has just handed in his letter of resignation. He's refusing to do anything else immoral. So it doesn't really make sense that Crane would have agreed to shoot Sam. The only thing it could be was that Crane was agreeing to stage Sam's death so she could get away. And then if you look at the timeline, you know, there's so many clues to the baby from the beginning. The first one being that when we find her in Scotland, an entire year has passed since the shooting in Tangier. And she's in training. She's in physical training. Why would that be? A year later, why was she gone for so long? And if you asked yourself that question, I mean, there were some people, including some X-Files who were watching the show, who guessed from the beginning, from that very first, you know, a year later, oh, she had the kid. That's why it's a year. And then in that first episode, when she gets the newspapers and coffee in the village, she stops on the sidewalk and she greets a little baby and a nanny. And that, in fact, is the same baby and nanny that you see in episode 8. And there's more clues that continue throughout the episodes. And so I'd say a percentage of the audience, when they saw it, they go, aha. Probably not the majority. I'd say the majority were like, well, what does that mean? But hopefully by talking to people, they've got the answers. They've been able to suss it out.
Yeah, because I would have been in that majority camp. I think that, the main callback that I got was actually the bathtub.
Yes.
Her, trying to drown herself in essence. That was the callback that I got. And I loved it too, because it was just such this cool moment of connecting one end to the other.
Yes.
And I think that all those other threads that you were just talking about will probably become more apparent as you go back and watch the whole thing together.
Yeah.
Because to be quite honest, in my mind, it was so well done that the guy who, stages her death at the end, I thought he was, I would have thought the other way around, because those people, you set those people up to have a conscience yet not have a conscience, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
So
it's funny.
You definitely succeeded in the keeping people off balance, so you don't have to worry about that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, maybe a little too off balance. But the thing in the bathtub, in the beginning, it was just like, well, she's holding her breath to increase her lung capacity, which is something people do. Singers do that a lot. They hold their breath. They hold their breath underwater to increase their ability to hold a note. And it occurred to me at some point, probably episode 3 or 4, because I knew that Jack Turner was going to try and kill her at the end. I knew that he was going to use poison and finally kill her. And I thought, well, what if he drowns her in the bathtub? And then that training she did in episode 1 would actually be the very same thing that saved her life. And I liked what the same thing you liked about it. I liked the circularity of it. I liked that it was this thing that happened in the very beginning that ends up unexpectedly being critical in the end.
Are there any other points like that you think that people may have missed along the way or would want to go back and see if they could catch again?
Oh, many, many, many. I mean, it's so dense and so woven, and it's one of those shows, which is not always good for broadcasters. But if you're the type of person who loves television, I actually do think it's better the second time because you know where it's going, and so you go, oh, I see. It was all there from the beginning, and it really was. And that was the joy of doing this for me, was like a novel or something. You know the beginning and the end, and you can make sure it's all one organic story. And I don't think I dropped anything. And so many things that are in episode 1 come back in episode 8. Like the first time you meet the blank-faced man, he's in a cafe in Istanbul. And we find in episode 7 that that's where Sam gave birth to her baby. So the blank-faced man that's not some arbitrary location. He was obviously trying to locate Sam, and that's why he was in Istanbul. And then also in that very first scene where you meet him, he's got something on his laptop that he's studying. What is it? It's the ambassador's painting. Painting you see in episode 5, which is the key to the whole hourglass conspiracy. There are a lot of questions, though, by design, mostly about this big story, like who does the blank-faced man work for, who in this conspiracy wants Sam dead, and why. And those are all answers, we would have gotten season 2 of Hunted, but I still hope you'd get in the spinoff.
Well, before we move on to talking about that, is there anything else about either the ending or somewhere along the way that you want to share with people?
No, I mean, I just, you follow the Stephen Turner storyline, or the Tyrone storyline, or the Crane storyline, the Keel storyline. They all have arcs that begin in episode 1 and continue through the whole series. So if you like that kind of denseness and challenge, this is the show for you.